Canadian prepper here. I cannot believe what has transpired in the last 48 hours. Each one of these stories that we're going to talk about, if they would have happened any other year prior to 2020, would have been stories of the year. Instead, these are things we are going to forget probably in the next couple days because they will be overshadowed by even bigger stories. Now, get a load of this, okay? While we were sleeping and indulging in our pseudo-religious materialistic festivities this time of year, as we usually do, opening presents, stuffing our faces, and overindulging, and I am, guilty as charged, 90% of the world who doesn't celebrate December 25th in the way that we do here in the Western-centric West continued in their pernicious slow creep towards SHTF unabated. And when I say unabated, I'm talking about escalated. Get a load of this. This is what has transpired in just the last 48 hours. Not only has the East Coast seen the blizzard of the century, while record temperatures and weather anomalies around North America have had everybody caught off guard, we have attacks on 3 separate substations in Washington, attacks on the power grid. Obviously, this was not just a coincidence. They're saying it was burglars. It was not burglars. We know exactly what this is, and I'm going to let you know in just a minute. But there were attacks on the power grid here in the United States that not many people are even going to be aware had actually happened. Now, the big news, well, one of the big pieces of news, the last 24, is another attack on Russia's nuclear base, where they house one leg of their nuclear triad, Engels Air Force Base. We're going to talk about that. There were many other sabotage attempts behind Russian lines. This is why I think this is all connected. The attacks on the power grid in the United States, and everything is connected. We need to start viewing this as a poly-crisis, okay? We have China sending 71 warplanes and 7 ships towards Taiwan just in the last 24 hours. Probably the biggest story of all is this incursion into South Korean airspace by 5 North Korean drones. And the real big news of the day is that NATO was not able to intercept. I say NATO, I mean the United States and South Korea. The THAAD system was not able to intercept, and in fact, to add insult to injury, the South Korean plane that attempted to intercept one of these drones crashed. Okay? And the helicopter that attempted to shoot one down was unsuccessful. So somebody is biting their nails more than the Canadian prepper right now, and I believe it is probably some of the U.S. military generals, because they are realizing that perhaps we're a bit of a paper tiger as well. We have tensions rising in Serbia and Kosovo as shots were fired there on the border. We have tensions rising between Iran and Ukraine, Ukraine calling on the international community to actually take out some of Iran's facilities, conventional facilities, which I doubt is ever going to happen. But of course, we see this alliance between Ukraine and Israel starting to strengthen. Iran has today threatened to take out Israel's nuclear power plant, where they allege that Israel is building nuclear weapons. So this situation is just getting wildly out of control. The possibility for a radiological event is increasing by the day. Okay, there's a reason why Russia has built that protective barrier over the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, because a major offensive is coming. This is a world war, and people need to start viewing their world, their investments, and planning their future around what appears to be inevitable at this point. Okay, UN has warned that millions of people are going to be dying of starvation next year as a result of these polycrisis elements. So where do we start today? Let's start at the attack on Engels Air Base. Okay, I believe Engels Air Base is in the Saratov region, not too far from Moscow. This is around 900 miles from the border with Ukraine and Russia. That means that Ukraine continues to target deep inside Russia, likely with the aid of NATO intelligence, satellite-based information. In fact, this was leaked recently that this, in fact, or at least the Russians believe that NATO is complicit in these attacks. So that's all we need to know. Of course, there's been speculation that the United States has greenlit attacks deep into territory, and that these drones that the Ukrainians are using are utilizing Western technology. That is not technology that was native born just from Ukraine. I mean, that should be obvious at this point. It's clear cut what is happening. You have the North Koreans who are supplying the Wagner Group in Russia. You have the Iranians who are supplying the Russians, and the Russians are probably acting as a bit of a nuclear umbrella over everybody. North Korea, China, and Iran included, as well as a few others. So the lines between East and West are becoming more hardened. All of who we view as the axes, if you will, are becoming more interoperable in their militaries. They're having more joint military exercises, and they're just cooperating more. They're starting to send each other weapons and share technology and information. So the real kinetic World War III, we're just a stone's throw away from that. We're in it already. Okay, we have these sleeper cells clearly in the United States. This attack, and sorry to jump around all over the place, but it's hard for me because I'm trying to look at the big picture, the macro picture. It's hard for me to look at any of these things in isolation anymore. And this attack on Washington, I got to say something about this, okay, because get a load of this. This is how they're framing it. Burglars in Tacoma, Washington, vandalized 3 power stations this morning, leaving about 14,000 customers without electricity. Why do they call them burglars? I mean, are they trying to, not create a panic in doing that? Because think about how easy it would be. Not only do you have this border crisis, so you know that there are probably thousands of sleeper cells or people who perhaps are paid to do things and don't even know why they're doing it. You got to understand that the more dire economic times become, the more desperate people are who are coming over the border. I would not put it past that they are being paid by proxy by either Russian or Chinese or whatever. I mean, we're just speculating here, but I'm just saying it would be very possible that people could come over the border. They don't necessarily have to be Russian or Chinese or of Middle Eastern descent. They could be of Mexican descent, and they could be being paid to do certain things and to create trouble within the country behind enemy lines. This is exactly what you see, these asymmetrical style attacks, so that we can avoid going to nuclear war. I mean, we're going to do everything short of going to nuclear war before a nuclear war actually happens. That means cyber attacks. That means asymmetrical strikes on critical infrastructure behind enemy lines. That means that 4th, 5th generation warfare, whatever it's called, on social media, trying to create civil unrest, which is what Dmitry Medvedev, in fact, predicted today. He predicts that in 2023, the United States is going to descend into civil war. Well, because we live in a glass house, it probably wouldn't be too hard. And this is probably why they're trying to ban TikTok. But you see how my brain thinks. You can't look at any of these things in isolation because it's all part of the global poly crisis. So this is concerning to me. I think that there's something behind this, because they say at 5:30 a.m. there was an attack on a substation at 46th Avenue. Then at 11:25 a.m. there was another attack on a separate system. Then at 2:40 a.m. there was another attack. So this was not a coincidence. This was clearly premeditated. This wasn't just random acts of vandalism for no reason. I'm not sure why they're framing it as burglars. Were these like Ocean's 11 style heists where they were trying to shut off the power so they could rob a bank? I'm not sure, but that's incredibly suspicious to me. Okay? And now you have a U.S. Special Army Ops veteran. What is his name? Jack Murphy. He claims that the CIA is behind a spate of explosions in Russia. This is what I've been saying all along, that all of these attacks behind Russian lines, this is not a coincidence. Okay, a coincidence is, 1 or 2 times. This has been happening with great frequency and intensity. The CIA, he claims, is combining with the spy service of NATO and an unnamed NATO ally in Europe to conduct covert sabotage operations inside Russia. Now, this isn't from a Russia centric news source. This is actually from the Daily Mail, which tends to be a little bit tabloid, but they also, I mean, they show up in Google search results. So take it for what it's worth. I know some of you are going to have something to say about that. So do I, but just take it for what it's worth. This is not coming from pro-Russian media, okay? The clandestine campaign is behind many unexplained explosions and fires that have hit strategic and prominent facilities in recent months. This type of thing right here is what is going to bring us to the brink of nuclear Armageddon. This is what's going to bring us to the brink. Now, if they start doing assassinations, that's when we're just one Franz Ferdinand moment away from full-blown SHTF. Oil and gas facilities, railways, fuel depots, power plants, and shopping malls have all been hit across Russia by mysterious explosions and rumors of sabotage. The campaign involves long-standing sleeper cells that the Allied spy service has activated to hinder Moscow's invasion of Ukraine by waging a secret war behind Russian enemy lines. Yes, James Bond is unfolding right now. The plot of James Bond, what movie are they on now? James Bond 10? I don't even know. Of course, the CIA has denied the allegations, but get this, Murphy has said that while the CIA has denied this as categorically false, the agency is entitled to make such denials under Title 50 of the U.S. Code, which authorizes covert actions. So they're never going to admit to it anyways. They even go on to talk about the aircraft carrier fire. None of this is a coincidence. All of these airplanes, now I am entirely convinced, the South Korean jets that are falling from the skies, the B-2 bombers that are lighting on fire, the submarines, I'm starting to think that there's some cyber stuff going on here, electronic warfare, something is going on. This is not accidental, and we are seeing the zygote of World War III birth before our eyes. We also have the Russians intercepting saboteurs, 4 Ukrainian saboteurs on the border. You never know what really transpires when you read a story like this. They're saying that 4 saboteurs who attempted to enter the territory of Bryansk region from Ukraine, they apparently were going to blow something up. They had like 40 kilograms of TNT. I don't know exactly how much that would amount to, but obviously maybe they were going to target a pipeline again or something to that effect. But yeah, I mean, these things are becoming more and more frequent. And as Ukraine becomes more and more desperate, as the death knell approaches with the Russian winter offensive that is right over the horizon, then you're going to see more and more of this stuff. Again, another instance of a fire was a MiG-31 fire that just magically caught fire in Belarus. These are the ones that can carry the Kinzhal hypersonic nuclear missiles. And of course, Medvedev has insisted that the only thing that stops our enemies today is the understanding that Russia will be guided by the doctrine of nuclear deterrence. And I agree with him on that. I think if it wasn't for Russia's nuclear weapons, then this would be an entirely different war. But NATO knows what's up. And I said yesterday, was it yesterday or a couple days ago, that I thought that what likely the Russians wanted to do, because they've been creating these new missile deployment systems. So this is why the New START treaty is kind of irrelevant in a way, because it's all about the delivery system with the nukes. It's less about the nuclear weapon itself when you have thousands of them. It's more about, can you create a method of deployment that can bypass missile defense in ways that are new and innovative and creative. If you can do that, then it doesn't really matter how many nukes, if you keep the nukes under a certain level with the strategic arms control or not. It's all about, because you still, there's still allowances to fine-tune and improve the delivery system. So the New START treaty really is kind of just symbolic. It's not really that meaningful. And of course, now that is totally out the window. We have Vladimir Putin insisting that 99% of Russians are ready to sacrifice everything. He says, as for the most, 99% of our citizens are people that are ready to sacrifice everything for the motherland. It doesn't strike me as unusual that this is the case. And for Americans and Canadians who think that this is odd, I want to ask you, if the Russians were let's say that we were at war with Mexico. Just, I'm not to pick on Mexico, but let's say that was the case and the Russians were backing the Mexicans. We have convinced people, soldiers, young men, to go over and fight wars overseas in the Middle East, in Vietnam. Sure, there was a little bit of pushback, but by and large, people complied. Now imagine the patriotism if you knew that a war was right on your border. Imagine how many people would sign up. Imagine how strong the desire to fight for one's country would be. So I am not at all surprised to hear Vladimir Putin saying something like 99% of people would support this conflict. Yes, there's been a lot of people who have gone AWOL and who have left the country. Obviously, you're going to have draft dodgers, but I think that if this war was on our borders, you would see people volunteering in droves. In fact, I would probably be one of those people if I wasn't convinced that this was all just some elaborate ploy by the military-industrial complex, which is not what I'm saying in this instance. I'm just trying to rationalize ways that I would maybe not want to commit to such a conflict. But yeah, of course the Russians are going to want to secure their borders and do what's in their national security's interest, okay? We have the United States apparently buying or planning on buying 120 tanks from Morocco. That must be their entire fleet. They can't have too many. And mysteriously, the same day this news comes out, there actually was an attack on a Moroccan, what was it, a propane gas facility? I don't have the news here. But like I said, guys, we're going to continue to see these asymmetrical style attacks on critical infrastructure around the world. Oh yes, explosion ignites fire in Moroccan propane gas storage plant. Interesting. 5 tank trucks were destroyed in the fire. This is just 9 miles north of Casablanca. And an investigation has been launched. They don't know what caused this blaze just yet. So you're going to start to see all of these other countries, these proxies being brought into this conflict. And the war is just getting started. Now, in terms of, let's just quickly touch on what has happened with this weather chaos here in North America. We have pipes bursting all across the south because, of course, they're not accustomed to these types of temperatures. One of the best pieces of advice that I've ever gotten with respect to trying to winterize your pipes, if you find yourself in one of these crazy, unprecedented, what they're calling blizzard of the century type experiences, is to keep your facets running so that that is going to minimize the risk that your pipes are going to freeze. You can insulate the pipes in your home. You can, there's various different things that you can do, and we should probably just do a dedicated review on that, but it's causing a lot of problems, and there's now looting. And this should be a lesson to people who are in these areas that are hard hit by this, is that people will take advantage in a crisis like this where emergency services cannot respond, especially in a winter situation where they're just simply, the roads are impassable. So even if, unless they have tanks or monster trucks, the police are not going to be able to respond. So there's absolutely going to be looting in times like these. And this is where you see that intersect between the poly-crisis intersect between the socioeconomic issues and just the degenerate nature of our society and these emergencies, these climactic disasters, all merging into the perfect storm where you have people taking advantage of this unprecedented climate chaos because shit's hitting the fan in more ways than one. Blizzard of the century. That would have been the story of the year had it not been overshadowed by so much else that is going on right now. China is, as I talked about yesterday, they have one of the biggest concentrations of military being set up right off the, not off the coast, but in the South China Sea around the Philippines. One of the biggest concentrations of military force since World War II. Today, they sent 71 warplanes and 7 ships towards Taiwan in the last 24 hours. And these incursions, of course, are just to try to weaken Taiwan's defensive systems. And we're starting to see that with the North Korean, South Korean situation, that has proven the ineffectiveness of a lot of our missile defense systems. The THAAD did not detect. The helicopters couldn't even shoot these simple drones down, for which North Korea has an estimated at least 1,000 of these things. So while there is one political party in Taiwan who I believe is, I wouldn't call them pro-China, but they're a little bit more pro-China than the party who is currently in power. I would be very cautious with assuming things like that. A lot of people thought that the new president of Italy was going to be more sympathetic to Russia's national security interests, and of course that has turned out to be the complete opposite. She's leaning in, she's hardline, pro-war against Russia. So I think what we're seeing right now is the military-industrial complex is very powerful, and it doesn't really matter who gets in power in these countries. We're on a collision course for war. It's very unlikely that China or Russia is going to be able to resolve these situations with color revolutions or puppet governments. That's the vibe that I'm getting. So yes, the war with China and Taiwan is coming. Now, in terms of what's going on in China, some crazy stuff is going on. I mean, you got lineups of people with bodies waiting to be taken into crematoriums. You have a lot of people dying right now. And somebody explained it very well in this article that I read about a potential COVID mutation happening in China as a result of millions. I think 37 million people were estimated to have been infected in one day. So talk about exceeding the curve. Experts have warned that much of the mildness that we've experienced over the past 6 to 12 months in many parts of the world has been due to the accumulated immunity through the jab or infection, not because the virus has substantially changed. So we often hear this idea that the virus is going to become less virulent and more infectious over time. They're saying the complete opposite. They're saying it's not that it's become less lethal. I guess it depends on how you want to define lethal. But they're saying that it's because we've all developed immunity, many people have had the jab, etc., and that there is still a possibility that with this massive circulation, it's almost a sure thing that the virus is going to mutate into some other form, and they can't rule out that it's not going to mutate in the direction of even becoming more dangerous. So as we go into World War III, the possibility for bioterrorism becomes very, very high, especially when you know that there's all these level 5 labs that at one point, I mean, there's stuff going on in Ukraine too that I'm not even going to begin to try to speculate on what's going on there, but something is not right. But we know with Wuhan and the level 5 facility and the work that the United States and the Chinese were working on together, what's to stop somebody at this point in time from trying to open the floodgates again? And I think it was WION, the news service, the Indian news service, and yeah, they're very anti-China, but they came out and they made a very bold statement the other day. They said that they thought China was trying to weaponize COVID. And they said, look, we know we're being a little conspiratorial here, but they predict that China is attempting to get COVID to spread around the world again to try to cripple the rest of the world, right? So it's difficult to say because, of course, they're shooting themselves in the foot at the same time. And sometimes I wonder, was COVID just a way we got lucky and that we pushed this World War III stuff back a couple years, or was it an accelerant? Was it a catalyst for all this bad stuff to happen? Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section below. But right now in China, emergency rooms are turning people away. It's the complete opposite. Okay, they've gone in the complete opposite direction. Now, this situation in Korea is pretty sketchy, if you ask me. Why were the North Koreans flying 5 drones into South Korean airspace, and why were the South Koreans not able to intercept? People are criticizing the Russians for not being able to intercept these drones that have been targeting Engels Air Force Base. And I should say about that Engels Air Force Base drone situation, they keep saying that they're intercepting these drones and that it's the debris raining down that is killing people. That is bullshit, guys. Come on. The drone obviously hit its target, and they're just trying to say that they intercepted it. Maybe there's video, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I mean, if we're to use common sense at this point, this is the second time it's happened. People died the first time, bombers were targeted the first time. They keep saying, oh yeah, we shot it down, it was just debris. Come on. And South Korea is downplaying this as well. So it's probably that missile defense in general just sucks. And this is why the nuclear situation, like all of the old simulations where NORAD would intercept all the missiles that were coming over the Arctic, that was likely all bullshit. We probably wouldn't have hit any, and they all would have hit their targets, and it would have just been total annihilation. And I think we're starting to realize the shortcomings of all of our missile defense systems here. So whenever you hear, 90% of missiles were intercepted, I don't buy that one bit. Especially coming out of Ukraine. I think that this situation, that they were able to bypass THAAD, which is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System in the United States, who has been doing a lot of joint military exercises with the South Koreans lately. I think that's a testament to the fact that our defensive technology is not nearly as good. If the North Koreans could bring these 5 drones in, hover for apparently 7 hours, fly around for 7 hours. Now, were they scoping the place out? Are they actually getting ready to do an attack? I mean, nobody is more ready at the drop of a hat to attack another country than the North Koreans. They're always on a state of high alert. In fact, they're still in a state of war with the South Koreans, like officially. Now, a South Korean jet went down attempting to intercept one of these drones. Why? I mean, of all the joint military exercises that they've done, why has a jet just, mysteriously went down, caught fire? Come on. Something's going on there, guys. I mean, we're really, at this point, speculation should be expected at this point, because this just all sounds so fake, everything that we're being fed right now with respect to why these things. Oh, it was just an accident. Yeah, our fighter jet just magically went down while trying to intercept 5 drones, and a helicopter could not shoot it down after firing hundreds of rounds at the thing. Something is going on. Something big is going on, and we're going to be the last to know. Unfortunately, a South Korean Ka-1 light aircraft crashed on Monday as it scrambled to intercept North Korean drones that intruded South Korean airspace. Okay, sure. Serbia and Kosovo, that situation is expected to flare up any day now. So, Serbia, I guess they still believe that Kosovo should be a part of Serbia, or however it goes. I don't really know a lot of the history of that situation there, but it appears as though they're on the brink of conflict, which in and of itself is rather small and ineffectual in the grand scheme of things, but it's like Russia and Ukraine is the big fire, and that is sending off sparks everywhere else that are creating more fires. Okay, just kind of like a forest fire. We have Iran making a video, or releasing a video on their state TV that showed what they would do if Israel targeted their nuclear facilities. Now, you might think that this might beget a full-blown nuclear response from the Israelis. So if the Israelis target Iran's nuclear facilities and they're able to successfully take out one or maybe even both of these facilities, I think one is dug in pretty deep, or it's pretty well defended. But if they're able to do one and the Iranians respond by targeting Israel's nuclear facility, which of course would be a radiological disaster, and Israel's not a big place. So, that would have drastic repercussions, negative repercussions for the the immediate region there. And you would think that that would elicit a nuclear response from the Israelis. I mean, why else do they have nuclear weapons? And of course, that then would test the alliance of Russia and Iran. The question is, will Israel actually attack Iran? Right? I mean, we know that the United States is willing to do things. They took out Soleimani, and they've done war games simulating attacks just this year on Iran's nuclear facilities, but they have hesitated to do so in spite of the fact that Iran is now at like 60% enrichment. Always, of course, as the joke goes, just a few weeks from reaching 90% enrichment required for a nuclear weapon. But it really doesn't matter if the Iranians are under the Russian nuclear umbrella, which it appears that they may well be. I don't think Russia is going to sit idly by, and I don't think the Iranians are going to continue to give Russia their conventional munitions and deplete their own stocks if they don't have guarantees from Russia that you're going to come to our aid in a nuclear sense if the Israelis and the Americans target us, right? So the world is about to change in 2023, my friends. And the Ukrainians now are calling for the world to the Ukrainians are calling on the world to target the Iranians. Iranians. Very similar. We should make a rap song about that or something. But that, of course, has caused the Iranians to respond to the Ukrainians that, you know, you guys should maybe not talk because we might have to shoot missiles in your direction. Chaos abound. And the worst part of all of this is that many people are going to go hungry next year. The UN predicts that at least 50 million people are going to be facing famine next year. And the actual number of people in the world with food insecurity is going to raise to 350 million. And that is if everything stays the same. Now, we know that the growing seasons are going to be compromised. We know that the winter wheat crop has been compromised in the United States, and all of these climatic anomalies are going to drastically impact our ability to grow food, as well as the rising input costs. If World War III breaks out, which would make sense why the Chinese have been stockpiling grain and have their grain silos fuller than they've ever been before, would all make sense. It's very likely that the price of food is going to go sky high, and we're going to see a Malthusian catastrophe of epic proportions. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. Oh yeah, and my gift to you this year, so that you can gear up while you can, we have a Boxing Day deal at Canadian Preparedness, 14% off, store-wide, no crap, no gimmicks, no price fixing bullshit where we raise the price 70% and drop it down 50%, 14% off store-wide, off the MSRP price. Okay, so we're not boosting our prices like a lot of places do. That's where you're going to find high quality gear. We only sell stuff that we ourselves would use, because I just want people to have a fighting chance at what's coming. And I think it's all going to get very real this year. Fortunately, we are insulated by a couple oceans, but that doesn't mean that the attacks on the power grid are not going to continue, and that there's not going to be consequences for us all as well. So get ready, guys. 2023 is about to start, and I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be even worse than 2022. But let me know what you think in the comment section below, and stay tuned for our predictions video that is coming up probably in the next 24 hours or so. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.